Hello and welcome to Business Development Guidelines, how to close a deal in 7 steps. My name is Audrius. I'm a professional business developer and Praxis Consulta founder. During this course, we will discuss 7 important steps that every single salesperson will have to cover in order to reach the deal. Later on, you'll be able to go through the main points in your workbook, where you will also find some examples and templates that you can use to perfect your sales scenario. So let's begin. The first and foremost is building a rapport. What is a rapport? A rapport is a connection, making a friend, if we can say so, with a client. Sometimes you have a click just like that and it's easy to make a rapport. In other cases, it's way harder. And of course now, during the corona pandemics, it's extremely hard not to visit people, not to see how they live, how they work in real life. We have to do it over the phone or conference calls. However, conference calls actually opened another dimension. We are able to see into the people's houses, where they live, what they do, what sort of hobbies do they have. That might spark some more conversations. And I would definitely encourage you to do that. Building a rapport is a very important task, and it will dramatically help you not only during your initial sales process, but for after sales, for keeping the relationship with your client. In order to build a rapport, you have to observe, you have to look, you have to listen to your client, and also ask some questions. If you are over the phone and you need to establish a better connection with the client, try to pick up some topics that might interest the client. Maybe there's some news that you have heard of and you can share with the client. Maybe there is something on their website, some addition to the team, or maybe expanding an office in one or the other direction. You may also ask about that. And if you're having a conversation via video call and see the surroundings, for example, you see a house where the guitar is hanging, some paintings on the wall, or maybe some kids' pictures. You can always ask, who does this guitar belong to, the story behind this picture, and so on and so forth. Definitely do speak about the weekends, about the leisure time, about even the tough topics. How did they handle the COVID? Because it was hard for every single of us. So we can share, we can relate to each other and feel stronger together. When you establish a rapport, the other steps will be way easier. A client is becoming a step closer to you, becoming a friend. Next step is questions. What sort of questions shall you ask, and how should they sound? Should you interrupt the client when you hear some topics that relate to your product? My suggestion is to handle it naturally. However, don't lose control of the conversation, because some conversations you may engage into might last for hours. If you start talking politics, if you start talking religion or differences, those topics are endless. You have to learn to bring the client, to bring the focus back to the topic why you came. The main questions, first of all, should start from general ones. Start talking about the general understanding of their company. Ask them, why did they establish themselves in this office specifically? Why not in another building? What sort of services do they think it's important for them to focus on? What are the key areas they are expanding? Definitely, you may figure out some of that information from their website. However, it's pretty much general overall. So it's much better to ask for opinion. And the client, of course, they can express their opinion. Where do they think the company should focus? What sort of challenges they might face? Competitors they might see in another country where they're expanding. Maybe there are some other related matters that you have to take into an account. Taking the general questions and making them a bit narrower always helps you to go deeper into clients' needs, into clients' problems. It's becoming more sensitive because you'll be asking about things that might not be so comfortable to talk about initially, and you have to build the trust. So going forwards and making those questions more specific, more narrow, you'll have to talk about something which might be of difficult to talk about. What sort of problems have they faced before when they were promoting this specific product into another market? How did they came about the targets? Did they manage to reach those targets that they had set up? What sort of targets do they have for this year? Where they would like to be in the next 5 years? What's the plan to get there? Some of those answers might not relate to your product directly, however, you'll have a vision of the company, and this is very important, of course, if you're looking to work with them for longer. Because next time you can continue where you have left off. So for example, you can start asking what sort of criteria do they have for their vendors? How do they recognize whether the vendor is suitable for the specific task or not? Those questions might hurt you because some answers may directly be addressed to your product or service. The client does not know your product or service completely yet. They might have heard something, but they are now imagining. And from the questions that you will ask and the answers you'll receive, you will see what sort of idea do they have behind this image that they normally have about the service provider such as you. So this would help you to overcome those objections even before they will come later. Always, and I stress it, always do know what are you going to ask in the next 2 steps. So for example, if you would like to have an understanding what sort of challenges do they have in, let's say, in Singapore market, you have to start a bit sooner. You may start from talking about the teams, about the people. So what I would do, I would ask, how many people do you have in your team? So for example, the answer could be 2 or 3. If you had only 2 or 3 people last year, how did you manage to make sure Singapore market will perform? It must have been a really hard task for you, wasn't it? And this empathy with the client would actually help you to understand the challenges. Always begin with the ended idea. When you begin with the ended idea, you know where you will end up, and always have a target. When you start a sentence, you start a conversation, you start a meeting, always have a target. What would you like to get out of this meeting? What is your primary goal here? To come out with a deal, to set up a next meeting with the board, or maybe find out more information about the competitor. Drilling even deeper down, we will come into the features. So, what sort of features do they normally value when they buy similar service? What did they find that worked best for them in all those years that they have been doing business? What were key drawbacks that they have noticed? What would they like to see in a product if such product would be developed? However, now what we have to do is to stop and summarize. When we summarize, actually they feel that we understood what they were trying to explain to us. So focus on the details that would relate to your sales pitch, to your product mainly. So for example, Mr. Client, from what you have told me, I understood that last year with only 3 people you have managed to open a branch in Singapore, and understood that this was quite a challenge for you and a stress for the team. However, you also mentioned that there were some issues because you did not receive enough of training from marketing company and marketing support too. So the client would understand that you have listened to them, you understood their problems, and actually you understood the actual situation. What we need to do now is to ask more of those concentrated questions, simply to relate to the client and go back to what we have to say. Mr. Client, when you said that your product has a vast potential in the Indonesian market, however, you did not find enough resources to promote it there to specific people, you have decided to postpone this product. Did I understand correctly that this product is still of interest to you to expand in that market? Do you feel that this product would successfully be open to be promoted in other markets too? When you talk to a client, try to keep a conversation as natural as possible. Of course, you do take notes. You have lined up what you need to ask. And I always do that in my notepad. When I hear a client talking to me, I do write some points that I would be interested to follow up upon. However, if we agree on some topics that I would need to come back later, for example, I do not have an answer for that yet, I would mark as well in my notepad during the conversation. Now it's time to do a presentation. What I normally do, I start from explaining who I am myself, what our company does in more detail, because definitely when you're arranging a meeting, the client already has some information, what you do and how you and your service might relate to their business. So what our job is now is to clearly state the reason why we wanted to talk to this client, what sort of services we provide and how does they match their needs. In terms of our company, so keep it brief but very concentrated in terms of main features of the company's main clients. When you talk to high-level people, they may want to know whether your company is listed in, let's say, London Stock Exchange or New York Stock Exchange, how much your company is valued and so on and so forth. So be ready for those questions. Be prepared to answer them. That will hint them that you know your numbers, you know your company's numbers as well, and you can explain him where your company is looking to expand, what sort of strategic decisions is it looking to make sure the product will become stronger, to become the market leading offer. When I have a conversation about my company and I feel that we are getting a bit more personal, so the client starts asking about myself, where did I travel, what did I see, I use this time to slowly turn on my laptop, log in, fire up a presentation, connect a cable. If something does not work, so for example your laptop is failing for some reason, or the cable doesn't work, or it can be a myriad of other reasons. So you simply continue a conversation and say, the IT is giving up on me today, and just close it and leave it for the next time. If you have some brochures, take them out, and physical brochures are same good. And actually one good advice is if you have something in your hands, let's say a brochure, I would definitely suggest you ask a permission to walk around the table, if that's a meeting, and sit down next to your client. In that case, you're crossing the border, you are sitting next to your potential client. Do always match principal features with the answers from the questions section. So we did ask the client what challenges did they have in Singapore, how big was their team, did they have marketing support in that country, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about our service and we say, oh, I remember you said that you had a challenging time in Singapore with such a small team, and I'm very pleased to tell you that for every single new client we allocate an account manager who is actually an extension of the client's internal team. Would that be of interest to you, Mr. Client? And if they said that they're looking to expand this product and spread it out globally, you can say, oh yes, actually similar to other clients that myself I personally manage, and those who are going globally with their product, I can definitely recommend this feature that comes into this proposal that I feel would definitely meet your needs, because it helps you strategically target the people in country A, B, C, D, E, F, as many as you want in fraction of time. Is that something that would be of interest to you? Another example would be that if a client saying that yes, they have felt a lack of customer support in the past, you can always assure, Mr. Client, I'm here for you all the time. Here is my phone number, my Messenger account, and I'll be happy to attend to any question that you have personally. I hope this will solve not only that problem, however, will help to eliminate a huge amount of miscommunication that there is normally in between two large organizations. Perhaps you have noticed when I was asking questions, I rarely use direct questions. I use let's suppose questions. Would you be interested in this? Would that make sense? It's simply because we are giving ourselves space. A space for a client to answer one way or another way. So if they would say no to that specific question, the client would not be saying no to the actual proposal. So you can ask as many of those questions as you feel needed. However, stick to your plan and make sure you will come out with what you have decided to come out with. So if it was an order or a next meeting or anything else, make sure you have it always in your mind. So you have finished the presentation, you have talked about number of features of your product or service that are linked to the needs. You have displayed how those needs can be satisfied by the use of your product. You have also talked about the pricing for this specific product. If you have displayed a couple of different products, make sure there is a price on each of them so the client can have an idea in their head and actually ask you some questions if there are some. So now we arrived at pre-closing. And pre-closing is something that helps you, even during a sales presentation, to ask questions in order to find out the actual position of the client. So for example, if we have talked about option A and option B, you may ask, dear Mr. Client, we have talked about those two different options. From your point of view, which one would be the best for your company to go with? You're making a presumption that they will be going for one or the other. If they say, oh, I think option one is much better for me, what makes you think like that? So the more information you have here, actually you help the client to sell the same option back to you. You might correct him or remind them features that they might have forgotten that are still important to match even more needs. So pre-closing is actually what helps us to ask those questions. What do you think about this product? Which one would you like to go for? In addition to what you have seen already, is there something else that you would like to add on? Those hints are already leading you to the close. But before you get there, of course, the client will ask some questions about the pricing, about the features, about how this specific service will be delivered, who will be delivering it, and when will that happen. So you see, we are already talking here not about buying or not buying, but actually how the service will be delivered. If we go through more details of the service delivery, you will see that if it's clear for the client, they will be more willing to accept this offer. So you have already handled major objections. However, there can be some other objections, maybe the price, maybe the lead time, who will be delivering the service or product. Once you respond to those objections with good, solid answers, that would enable you to move on to the next step, to closing. And closing is why we came here for. One of my favorite closing techniques is as follows. So once we discuss all the options available, matching those to the needs of the client, I normally have a couple of different proposals in my briefcase, and what I do, I take one of them out, I put it on the table, I turn it around so the client can read through, and I start explaining feature after feature. So for example, dear Mr. Client, we discussed that the first option has feature A, B and C that help you to reach your market here and also be visible in all those other countries as a thought leader. And the other feature helps you to eliminate this situation with the lack of human resource and lack of client support. As you see, the other option here, the second option, that has also the feature A, feature B and feature C. However, it does not have this so much required client support, which you said that might be quite important for you. Therefore, my recommendation would be to go after option 1. What I would do then, I would take my ink pen, I would put it on the proposal and I would wait. I might wait for 1 or 2 minutes, even longer. Sometimes I feel this urge to talk, to explain the features a bit more. However, I have to stop myself here. If I have done everything correctly from the beginning till the end, there is nothing else to be explained. The client has already expressed their needs, you have linked them with the features, you have handled the objections, and now it's time for closure. So the client will take the pen, and if there are no other explicit objections, they will simply sign it. And that's what we came here for. So this was the silent close. There are of course other closing techniques. Another one that I would suggest you using that would be for the worst case scenario. Imagine that for some reason there was no click. You put a proposal on the table, the client said, I will think about it. So try to figure out what stops them from signing. Do they need to talk to some other managers? Is there anything else you would like to see in the proposal? Do you consider other vendors at this point? So here you will need to handle the objections again. Those objections were always in the air, but you did not manage to fill them for some reason. So make sure you handle them right. If you are not able to handle all of them, don't worry. But what we do here, we run simulation sessions. So we teach you to handle those objections. We teach you to go around those objections, to make sure you take the most of all the hard work you have done and come back with a deal. So before leaving the room, what you can do, say your goodbye, say thank you for your time, for explaining me everything. You walk towards the door, you put your hand on the handle and then you turn around and ask, "Dear Mr. Client, just before I go, help me to understand, was there something in the offer you were not happy with?" And the client might say, we actually have an internal team that helps us with some of those matters. And that's exactly why I don't think we'll be going with any provider or with your provider today. Then you can turn around and say, "Mr. Client, I thought I expressed it well, but let me just put it in some other words. We are here not to compete, but to complement the internal teams." And actually most of our clients, they do have internal teams because their business is growing so fast that they need internal team support to ensure they have a global reach. So what we do here, we provide specific services for you, for your internal teams, so they can go out and have the best tools available to reach your own goals. Does that sound fair? So this is your turning point. Of course, there are so many different ways to handle the objection, to do the closing or do the drill down questions. The workbook is your guide to help you to close the deal in those 7 steps. Use this workbook to design strategy for every single client profile. So for example, if you work with manufacturers, with engineering companies or somebody else, they may have different needs. So figure out those needs and indicate them matching to those features of your service. Think about the objections that they may have. Think about the closing, what sort of closing you will be having here. And above all, practice. That's exactly why we run individual simulation sessions, so you can actually practice and perfect your sales pitch, negotiation and other skills in a safe environment. The way it works, we would have a conference call and we will run through your sales pitch. We will practice your negotiation skills. We'll practice your objection handling, needs matching. and of course closing, so you can make the most of every single contact, every single meeting, every single call that you do. In order to book a simulation, go to my bookings part on our website, select a date and place a booking here. And if you have any other questions related to the course or some suggestions, please send me a message and I'll be very happy to get back to you. And we will make sure that we will include most, if not all of them, in the coming sessions. So thank you again for joining, have a great day, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.